YouTube link you had going on. All right, so can everyone hear me? Perfect. Welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. We are here in Jenny Jump State Park in Hope, New Jersey. So it looks like we have a couple stragglers. Want to give them a time to settle in. Don't have my distance glasses, so I can't exactly see too well, but I can see movement out there. So I do want to welcome not only everyone who is joining us here, but also online, because that is right, we do live stream these presentations to both YouTube and Twitch. So if you're ever looking for something to do and haven't quite made it out here, you can always join us online there. Say hi in chat. I do monitor that throughout the presentation. And also hit those like and subscribe. It lets us know we're doing a good job. I do want to encourage everyone to visit our website, uacnj.org. It's where you're going to find the list of all our upcoming talks, as well as information on our member clubs. Because that's right, we are actually a organization made up of other astronomy clubs. And one of the easiest ways to get into astronomy is to find your local club. Not only are they great resources, but they're closer to you, easier to get to, and also have tips and tricks for perhaps observing in your area, because tips and tricks I might find good out here in Warren County, New Jersey, might not necessarily apply if you're closer to or in such places as New York City. I know I would be lost in New York City, and I'm not just talking about the grid traffic. That being said, you can also check us out on our social media, our Facebook, our Instagram. We have a Discord server. Those are all excellent ways to get in touch with us, find out what we're doing, what's coming up, as well as if you have any questions or just want to share the neat shot of like the moon or whatnot that you took. That's a great place to do so. Now, for the people here, there is a safety briefing. It is inescapable. I will go over it also after the presentation because inevitably people sneak in during. And like I said, safety briefing is inevitable. If you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty in back. It is big. It is blue. It is illuminated by a red light, which will be more visible when it becomes dark. We also have a little museum and gift shop area. I will be manning that after the presentation because as of yet, they haven't invented that technology to have me be in two places at once, and I was told it's because it breaks several laws of physics, and I am not allowed to break any laws. Wow. Anyhow, we do have a number of observatories that you may have noticed. They're the sheds. They have roll-off roofs. The one with the roofs rolled off each houses a different telescope. And after the presentation, we do have volunteers manning those. Feel free to go up to them, ask questions about what they're viewing through the telescope. And I believe both of those are set up for optical viewing.
Optical viewing tonight, and George is also set up on the lawn that you can stop by his personal scope and take a look.
In addition, when we go to leave, we are using our headlights. It is nice and bright now, but in the dark it is not so much, and it will get dark because this is a state park. We enjoy not getting run over. I am sure everyone here also agrees getting not run over is on the top of the to-do list tonight. So let's avoid that. That being said, if we have any flashlights or whatnot, do try and keep that light pointed towards the ground. We don't need to accidentally blind people with that brand new 200,000 lumen flashlight that you just got off of Amazon. You laugh. I heard laughter out there, but that happened last week. It was very bright. No night vision for him after that. But you're not here to hear me ramble on. You're actually here to listen to Paul.
Ramble on.
Paul Fischer has a Bachelor in Engineering and Chemical Engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology and has worked in the environmental and chemical industries. Though always interested in celestial objects, Paul's official start in amateur astronomy was one night several years ago, lying in awkward positions on his roof in the freezing cold, trying to get a nice clear view of the Galilean moons of Jupiter. And he succeeded. And from then on, that was it for him. He accumulated a red pile of astronomy textbooks that puts my to be read pile to shame. And he is now an active member of Northwest Jersey Amateur Astronomers and volunteers here at the United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. He's actually currently our vice president. Ooh, he did. And he still manages to frequently find himself outside at night in awkward positions in unbearable temperatures, both freezing cold and absolutely humid, muggy like it is now, seeing neat stuff in the night sky.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kim. As Kim mentioned, you bought a telescope. And now what is tonight's presentation? And I believe the title is relatively self-explanatory. This is the first presentation I put together a while back. So no real intelligence. I mean, when I say intelligence, I'm sorry. Some of the other books that I've read have done book reports, and they have some very notable intelligent people who are, experts in the field as the source material. This one, you have to just deal with some beginner knowledge that I picked up and wanted to pass along to you. So this is, you may have seen this screen. Some of you might have come up here before because of it. It is our program screen from our website. And just so you know, there is sort of a companion. One of our amateur astronomer observers has a very similar introductory course on, I forget what's Dan's, do you remember off the top of your head, Kim, what Dan's...
So you want to buy a telescope?
So you want to buy a telescope, something similar to that. So I urge you to check out Dan's presentation also as maybe a companion to this particular presentation. A war story already. So Kim actually went over this war story. This is how I began my amateur astronomy hobby, and how I'm here today talking to you and why I found it interesting. This amateur astronomy does not require boatloads of equipment. This is Jupiter. And these are the Galilean moons of Jupiter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of you in the back might find that difficult to see, but these 4 moons along the equatorial plane of Jupiter are very relevant, very obvious, even in a pair of binoculars. So if you know where Jupiter is, you can immediately jump into the field of amateur astronomy just by getting a pair of binoculars and pointing it at Jupiter. So kind of cool and kind of easy. All right, so that's that war story. That's how I got my start. I laid down on the roof and pointed a pair of binoculars at Jupiter. All right, a quote from a very famous gentleman, Sir Isaac Newton. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. So when you are looking at these cool things in the sky, realize that people hundreds or even thousands of years ago started looking at these things in the sky, and we have physics, mechanics, relativity, all these things based on the observations of how things go around each other in the sky. That's what they had as inspiration, right there. So you can look at this stuff and see the inspiration for how we have some of the coolest science, some of the coolest things that we have on the planet. as far as in the history of science. Obviously, Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton and others were all inspired by these types of observations. So you are peering into the history of science when you look at astronomy, and quite literally too. Yeah, that's the point of the story. Why is it pertinent? It's because of this appreciation of the history of science. Another reason is we start to understand a little bit about models and the idea of models in science and technology. So we don't, you realize that Newton and his theory of gravitation, Einstein and his theory of relativity were built upon more and more knowledge of how things interacted with each other. Relativity is more precise than Newton's laws of gravitation, for instance. They are models. They are predicted with mathematics how things act, and our understanding got better and better, and we had better and better predictions. It's not like science said, oh no, this is wrong, let's get rid of it, here's something new. It's better and better understandings. And that's how we think as human beings. We do not compute exactly reality. Reality in all its, from the tiniest thing to the largest thing, is infinite in scope, and we would be capable of understanding it completely. So we use models, and we develop these models from these observations. So you have to understand that science doesn't change its mind. It increases the understanding. It gets better models to use as it's convenient to help us understand things. One of those things is the geocentric versus heliocentric. What is geo standing? What's the prefix geo mean there? Earth. And what does helio mean? The sun. All right. So we had a long time thought the Earth was the center of the universe. Then we thought maybe the sun was the center of the universe. Now we know it's the center of our solar system and not the universe. So that's another example of jumping of models, increasing our understanding. And so that's why we think that amateur astronomy is really, really cool. We gain an appreciation for science itself. All right. So why all that important, or maybe important, but maybe not direct discussion of models? Why is that important? Because we still use models to understand what's happening in the sky. So everyone notices when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Everyone understands that, right? That's true? No, it's not true at all, right? The Earth is turning underneath the sun, right? So that's how it appears to us, but it's not true. So that's an example of a model. And we use that still to understand the motion of the planets as it appears to us in the sky. That things rise in the east and set in the west. But that's not what's happening. We are turning underneath the sky. And specifically underneath some of the more immovable objects that we can see at night. So that's another example of why the model and appreciating what a model is, it's just a way of understanding. It is not necessarily an exact reflection of reality. Science, philosophy, and religion, etc., universally agree that humans exclusively use models to understand reality. And again, that's not true. We have to switch up our models to understand uh, that how things work, and that science, philosophy, and religion have been debating these things as long as there's been science, philosophy, and religion. All right, so what's our particular model that we're going to use tonight? This is the celestial sphere, and I want to introduce to you as a concept. This is how we understand how the sky moves at night. So here we have the Earth, and we have this celestial sphere going around us overhead. Again, that's not truly what's happening, but this is what the model says. The North Pole is up and down here, with the North Celestial Pole being in the sky above our North Pole, and the South Celestial Pole being below our South Pole. We have an equator. The celestial sphere has an equator. And then there is this plane that seems to bisect at an angle, 22 degrees, in the sky, either above or below the equator, depending upon what time of year it is, that represents the tilt of our axis in the night sky. So as the stuff in the sky moves, apparently, which we know is not true, again, this is a model, things appear to move along the ecliptic in big circles or little circles. So how does that work? The sun, for instance, moves along the ecliptic plane. The planets, by and large, move along the ecliptic plane at night. So if you see the sun, the moon, or a bright object up in the sky, and it's moving along the same path that the sun and moon say move, which we're very familiar with, you can guess that that bright object is probably what? Mars, Jupiter, any of the planets. The planets move along the ecliptic plane, so that's how you can begin to identify planets in the sky. They're bright, and they move along the ecliptic plane. So that is a benefit of the model. That's why we think this way. And here's why it's happening. Here is the equator. Here's the Earth's tilt at 22 degrees. Here's an observer either on one side of the planet. This is on the day side. This is on the night side. So this person is viewing a planet I call Generica along, and I put this in, I put that along the ecliptic plane. So the sun through Earth, through this planet, are all along the ecliptic plane in that flat object we call the solar system. Relatively flat object. So the equator appears here. So the planet is below the celestial equator. Does everyone see how that works? And here it is, and so this would be what is the north portion of our planet, the north hemisphere, experiencing right here in this picture? Summer. Okay. That's why we have summer, because the top of the planet, as far as we're concerned, is leaning into the sun. There's more light hitting that portion of the Earth. Oops, wrong direction, sorry. And here's a winter configuration. Again, still we lie along the ecliptic plane here, all lined up in a flat disk. However, we are now, the north hemisphere is leaning away from the sun. We are experiencing winter. And you can see now that the planets are higher in the sky above the equator, along the ecliptic plane. And that's another appreciation we get from understanding that model. All right, so you want to get used to that coordinate system, the celestial sphere. You want to get used to that concept if you're buying a telescope, because it's going to help you figure out things about how to find stuff in the sky. Secondly, I think a couple people bought scopes here tonight, or one or two people bought scopes here tonight. I just want you to appreciate, we just talked about summer and winter, so to see all the things in the sky, what's the minimum amount of time it's going to take you? A year. So don't try to do it all tomorrow. It's going to take you at least a year, and some of these techniques take a long time and a deft touch to get used to. So this is a multi-year journey for most people to get proficient at these things. So do not worry. If you go outside and you find your first planet with your new telescope, you are zooming along. If you find your first deep sky object, you're really hitting it. So don't worry about finding many things quickly when you take on this hobby. All right, let's talk about equipment and a basic understanding. This is one type of telescope. Does anyone know what type of telescope there is? Let me tell you, there's a lens right here and a lens right here. And anyone who's done physics, some of the basic physics courses know that this is a light ray diagram. Okay, lens means it's a refractor. Think of it like a pirate's spyglass. A lens in front, a lens in back. The light travels through. This has a focus and this has a focus because they're both curved, and there is a place that the image appears. So this is the object, this is the image you're seeing, and it takes two curved objects to have some sort of magnification. There's a focus point at which the image appears, and that is what your eye is looking at, that image. This is a refractor. That's one type of telescope. Here's another type of telescope. Most beginner telescopes look like this, or many. Yeah. I have to be in the box. Sorry. This is a reflector. This is a Newtonian. All right, and this has, the light comes in this way, bounces off a mirror here, and then comes out the side. Wait, there's a mirror in here. So there's a curved mirror. There's a mirror here, and then it comes out. Why are we not seeing this mirror right here in the eyepiece? Why do we not see it? Because of these light rays. All these light rays coming from the same object are parallel, completely parallel. They are so far away. All these objects that we're looking at in these types of telescopes are so far away that the light coming in is parallel. Mathematically, I'm sure you can calculate the angle. The angle is so minuscule that it doesn't make a difference. And so what you are seeing is everywhere that object appears in this mirror, all these lines are parallel, so you're getting the same light. So you do not see this mirror in the reflection, right? Because you'd see a blank spot, right? Because these lights, if it were closer, you might have a dead spot where that mirror is if we were talking about a terrestrial object. But if we're talking about celestial objects, really, really far away, the light coming in is parallel, and therefore you do not see the image of that secondary reflecting mirror, the angle mirror there, in the image. That's why you see it. It's parallax. This is catadioptric. This specifically configuration is a Schmidt-Cassegrain. and the Schmidt-Cassegrain, the light comes in, bounces off the primary mirror, hits the secondary mirror, and then goes back out a hole in the primary mirror to the focal point or eyepiece. So the light travels through this guy 2 times. So any Newtonian is actually twice as long as it looks like, and the catadioptric is actually 3 times as long as it looks like. All right, so what's a telescope's main purpose? A telescope's main job is to make small objects that are far away bigger, correct? No. It's one of the purposes. Certainly helps. But that's not, I wouldn't necessarily consider it a main purpose. The main purpose is that your eye is 3 millimeters in radius, your pupil. The radius squared, and we're going to call that cross-sectional radio, we're going to divide 9 by 9 to get 1. However, if we divide a 4-inch telescope's radius squared in millimeters or an 8-inch telescope's mirror in diameter in millimeters, if we divide both of these numbers by 9, we get these numbers, which is a cross-sectional ratio, which means they have this much more light-gathering power than your naked eye. So they make dim objects much brighter. And that's a real important part about what telescopes do. So don't just think it's magnification. They're taking some some of the cameras count photons that are coming from these objects one by one. If you know anything about particle physics, that's ridiculous, that we're gathering particles one at a time and recording them and then sending them to our eye. All right? So what's happening is this is gathering a lot more light and sending it to our eyes. All right, so that's another very important part of understanding what telescopes are about, is that you realize that you are gathering additional light so you can see very dim objects. All right, another aspect is we talked about that objective. We talked about the mirror configurations inside the various telescopes. What we didn't talk about is that whenever you're magnifying something or whenever you want to focus something is coming from a curved mirror or lens, you need that second curved mirror or lens. And we get that in the form of eyepieces, modern eyepieces. Modern eyepieces such as the Plössl and the Nagler, orthoscopic, monocentric, different types of eyepieces are very sophisticated, and they themselves are very similar to telescopes. So they're not just another lens. They themselves are nowadays are made from multiple lenses with multiple coatings and are a very important part of amateur astronomy and regular astronomy. Additionally, I just want to let you know that a good eyepiece can start to creep up to about the cost of a beginner telescope. So because they are sophisticated pieces of equipment, they themselves have a sophisticated piece of equipment cost associated with them. However, most beginning telescope setups come with a couple of default eyepieces. So as you're learning astronomy, amateur astronomy, use the default eyepieces and invest in new eyepieces only when you understand the need for an additional eyepiece, something you wish you could do that you can't do with your current eyepieces. All right, so like I said, they have multiple compound lenses, coatings. Their focal length is typically right on the eyepiece. and is expressed in millimeters. There's two standards. There's a 1 1/4 inch smaller eyepiece and a 2-inch larger eyepiece. Medium grade eyepieces can rival a beginner's scope's value, as I said. There's also a couple of neat little things that you can put in there to increase your eyepiece experience. A reticle, Barlow, angle viewers, just make things comfortable or easier to find, etc. When using your telescope. Learn with your scope's default eyepieces, as I said. Maybe invest in a Barlow, relatively not costly, and it effectively doubles the amount of eyepieces you have. Some eyepiece terminology. There is the exit pupil, which is the image height exiting the eyepiece. The eye relief, which is how close your eye needs to be in order to see from the eyepiece. There's a apparent field of view and the true field of view. The apparent field of view divided by the magnification gives you your true field of view. Mounts. You have this telescope now, and maybe you picked a Newtonian, but now you can't aim it and hold it and look in the telescope. You have to put it on something. There's two types of mounts that are typically available. There's an altitude azimuth, for example, a Dobsonian that many people use with a Newtonian telescope. They're easy to set up and intuitive. They're artillery alike, right? You point it up or down, you swing it left or right, and that's it. Nice and easy. They're telescope-centric. They don't know where they're pointing in the sky unless a computer program is doing all the heavy math in order to figure it out. So you can't just set one of those up and know immediately where you're pointing in the sky. You were able to do that mechanically with this other type of mount without any computer. The equatorial mount is harder to set up and less intuitive to move. It had electromechanical tracking. They had what's called setting circles on them. You didn't even have to have any sort of motorization associated with it. If you set those setting circles up correctly, you knew where you were in the coordinate system in the sky just by understanding these setting circles. It's, like I said, sky-centric. If you do those setting circles, then you are then you are pointing exactly in a area of the sky where you can find objects, because you can look it up on a chart, see that object on a chart. If you use those setting circles, you can point the telescope directly at that object, even without a computer program. You don't have to do that nowadays with most computers. I mean, with most computer setups. They have two types of general types of telescopes: a push-to and a go-to with computer assist. Push-to will tell you where you have to point the telescope at the object, and it'll say it'll do a colder, warmer type of prompt in order to get you to the object. The go-to is more expensive, obviously, but has motors to drive the telescope into that location. And I guess I should mention now they have very competent robotic telescopes where you don't even have to set the telescope up anymore. It sets itself up. Other accessories you might want to consider as a beginner: a red flashlight, a regular flashlight, red dot finder, fixed focus finder scope, a Telrad, a green laser pointer, a broadband filter, a case for your equipment, and a bench or chair. You want to be stationary, not only the telescope, but yourself, when you are looking at very dim objects in the sky. All right, Some other things to consider when you are looking at just beginning for astronomy. Vision tips. You want 30 to 45 minutes for full adjustment of the rod cells in your eyes. All right, night vision. You need to wait for a while, and that's why it's very important, and why we ask you to keep your white light as discreet as possible, so you're not forcing someone to go through the 30 to 45 minute adjustment again. Use averted vision. So again, we're talking about night vision. Averted vision, the rod cells, if you remember from biology, are around the outside, your peripheral vision. So if you don't look directly at it, it applies to telescopes too. So if you're looking in a telescope and you look off to the side a little bit, you don't have to move your head, but you're going to maybe look with your eye a little bit off to the side of the object. You can actually maybe see the object a little bit better in the telescope. Second of all, motion. Now you can move your head or your eye around a little bit when you're looking at an object in a telescope. Some telescope computer systems actually have a routine where it scans back and forth a little bit to aid with motion. Your eyes are keyed into, way back from our evolutionary days, your eyes are very keyed into motion. You just imagine that would be a tremendous survival instinct for primitive people that are ancestors, that they can see motion coming at them in the middle of the night. And then another thing you want to worry about a little bit, or at least be aware of, is surface brightness. The deep sky objects especially, you can really want to get at that magnification and then magnify your way into not being able to see the object because you made it so dim. Because the more you magnify into the object, the less light is actually reaching you. Right? Because they have this thing called surface brightness. Consider it something, if you're familiar at all with flux and how flux works, consider it you're taking the amount of light coming from the object and you're dividing it by the apparent surface area when you look at it. So something similar to that. All right, so how do we learn the sky? Now we talked about the telescope and some of the things you want to look for when you are sitting down at your telescope. What about all that stuff? You know, the stuff that we really want to see. First, lose the scope to appreciate the scope. Just walking out and just trying to find constellations and objects in the sky is going to help you with this hobby very much. Just walk out and, oh, that's Orion, oh, that's the Summer Triangle, oh, that's a planet. If you could try to identify stuff in the sky, that's going to help you without taking the telescope out. Second, understand some navigation aids and how to use them. Understand about your cheating brain. So if you take your telescope out to your backyard and only use your backyard, your brain is going to understand that over this tree is where I see Orion in the winter. And then you go to another site somewhere and you don't have the tree anymore. So your brain cheats. It likes to make associations. So you want to purposefully break some of those associations associated with a very familiar site so that you can actually key in on the sky itself. And finally, sky parties and other events. In other words, something like tonight is going to help you out very much. All right, here are some of those navigation aids that I mentioned here. This is a planisphere. This will get you started on where the locations of various constellations are and some of the most prevalent objects in the sky at any time of the year. You can dial the time in and match it up with the date along here. If you're familiar with how a caliper works, it works similarly. You just dial the date in for the time, and it'll show you what's going to be up in the sky then. Hey, Kim's going to pass that one around, and we do have planispheres available inside. Maybe a little bit more detailed or a lot more detailed than the planisphere are, say, a 6th magnitude. The lower the number, the brighter the object in magnitude. A 6th magnitude star atlas, which is a thin pamphlet like you would, say, a county map. Anyone who remembers those? About that size. Versus 11th magnitude, much dimmer objects, but of course we have a whole galaxy full of these objects, and even universe full of these objects. So if you go down to 11th magnitude, you now have a 3-volume set like an encyclopedia that you would have to take with you if you're going to use this as a reference object. So you can imagine an 11th magnitude star atlas you might not be carrying with you on site. All right, anyone who has learned about maps, maybe some of the younger people, what's wrong with this setup of this planisphere here? I made it very big for you to be able to tell what's wrong with it. Some of the younger people, tell me. East and west is flipped. This direction is north here. So if I'm looking at this object east to west, so the north would be pointing this way, and it's telling me that west would be this way, which is not correct. So what's wrong with what I'm doing right now? Remember that the planisphere is sky-oriented, not planet-oriented. So in order to understand any of these atlases and any of these planispheres, any of that, you actually have to think, or actually do it physically, or think that you are looking and pointed at the sky. And then north, south, east, west does line up the correct way. So don't look at these things this way. Look at them this way, like you're looking at the sky. That's why they're backwards. Obviously, everyone uses these nowadays, the Star Atlas apps. Some of the things that this actually gives a rather small area in the sky that you're looking at. One of the advantages of the Star Atlas and the night sky is that you have larger swaths of the sky available to look at, and you can plan a session out of what objects you want to see much easier on some of the older technologies, because you can just see way more sky with these two references. So they have their uses. The computer isn't necessarily the only tool you should be using, although it is very useful. All right, objects you should see in the sky. Start with the moon. If you can get your finder and your finder on your telescope and your telescope pointed to the center of the moon, then you are on your way. That's a good thing to do. Then you can move on to the planets. And then you're going to learn some of the stars, because you were out looking in the sky, identifying constellations, and you remembered what some of the brighter stars are in those constellations. And then knowing those constellations, you can start finding by something called star hopping, you can start finding deep sky objects. And these are some of the deep sky objects you might want to find. Then there are outer planets and asteroids, which are more difficult to find, believe it, than many of the deep sky objects. And then some transient objects. So you go out specifically because you heard a comet is coming. But the comet moves in the sky every night, and you have to know how to find some of these objects that are easier to find before you can maybe start finding some of the transient objects. All right. So we have talked about some of the objects you might want to find. Where do I get information on those objects? Well, you can go to your computer, of course. But let's talk about how some of the names and some of the catalog references came from those that you when you find those objects in your computerized sky atlas, how those were generated. They were generated by people hundreds of years ago making lists of objects in the sky and where they were based on that mechanical method of locating things in the celestial sphere above your head. They were using setting circles and understood what those objects were, and they wrote them down in lists. One of the lists we use is the Messier catalog. And it's a catalog of deep sky objects that are very interesting. They're bright, they're easy to find, and Messier didn't want you to look at them. Messier was a comet hunter, and he didn't really not want you to look at them, but he made the list to exclude these objects. He knew of these objects. He knew they weren't comets, so he told other comet hunters, ignore these objects when you're comet hunting because they are not comets. But ironically, we use its biggest use nowadays isn't anything to do with comets, but they are bright objects that are very interesting in the sky, and we love to show them. They're cool objects, deep sky objects, like a star cluster or like a nebula in the sky. The NGC IC catalog is also a very well-used, often referenced catalog. Another list, and it was created by Dreyer, who built the work upon the Herschel family. The Messier catalog has about 110 objects currently, and the NGC IC catalog has close to 8,000 here, and let's call this one 5,000. So what is that? 13,000 objects in it. Another thing is, this is a picture that I took with my first telescope, which is just a push-to telescope with my cell phone. And that's the moon, of course. That's the level of detail you can see the moon at in a very simple, straightforward beginner telescope. You can start to notice things like magnitude. This is a very bright star. I think this is Sirius, in fact. And this is Albireo. You can actually see you're gathering enough light that you're not only are your rods activated, but your cones are activated, and you can actually appreciate color. You get to see the outer planets. And I believe this guy is Neptune. I might be wrong. I forget which one I included there, but I think that's Neptune. And it's interesting. Look at the color on that. And you did something here that's different. You actually doing what's called resolving the disk. You can tell that that is an object that has width. If you remember from your geometry, a point of light versus something that has width. This is obviously a circle, and a star might get brighter But at the telescopes we're talking about, you cannot resolve the disk of stars. In fact, even modern scientific astronomy space telescopes and interferometry telescopes have difficulty resolving the disk of a star. We can do it for a star like Betelgeuse, which has a diameter the size of the orbit of Jupiter in our solar system. We can resolve that disk, but for most stars we can't. All right, everyone's favorite subject, math. Oh no. All right, I'm just kidding you. It's not really that hard. Magnification equals the focal length of the telescope divided by the focal length of the eyepiece. The focal length of the telescope, you know that. You bought the telescope, you have the documents, you know what it is. The focal length of the eyepiece is even easier to find. It's right on the eyepiece. So that is how you calculate magnification. Divide one number by the other. Not exactly advanced algebra. You guys can do that. Then the true field of vision. The true field of view is equal to the actual field of view. Excuse me, let me get that terminology exactly right here, because I am misspeaking that one, and it's just not, there it is, apparent field of view. So the true field of view is equal to the apparent field of view, which again, you bought the eyepiece, so you're going to know the apparent field of view of your eyepiece, divided by the magnification, which you had calculated previously because I just told you how to do it. Now you have all the math you need to start creating an eyepiece chart for your telescope. Why is that at all helpful? Well, here you know maybe the angular size of any object in the sky because you looked it up on one of those charts. They will typically tell you what the angular size of an object in the sky is. This is a nebula, and this angle here that I indicate here, theta, is the angular size of that object. And say you don't know what that is. Well, you can calculate it because you have calculated your true field of view. And you know it fits across 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So if you know your true field of view, you take that true field of view and you divide it by 4, and now you have the size of your object. Or if you have the size of an object, now you know what eyepiece to use to appreciate that object the best. So that's it's a little advanced. Not everyone does that. You can just do it by trial and error, but it's a way of figuring out what eyepiece you need to see the object. Sometimes, like, an object is diffuse, and am I seeing the object? Am I looking right through it? Oh my gosh, this object is much bigger than the eyepiece that I selected. I should use an eyepiece that gives me less magnification. All right, coordinate system madness. Just be aware of this. Don't memorize it. You don't have to worry about it too much, but just be aware it exists if you run into an issue. Altitude and azimuth. Azimuth is how far east of north you are in degrees, and altitude is how far above the horizon. And that is, of course, using an alt-azimuth mount. You might want to know that. Right ascension and declination. Those are the coordinates for the celestial sphere. That's the ones that the equatorial mounts use. That's how we can find the object in the sky no matter what time of the night it is, no matter what part of the year we are, that we can see the object. That right ascension and declination is tacked up on the sky. Right ascension is how far east of Aquarius you are in hours of RA, and declination is how far above the equator you are in degrees. All right, and just to make things funsies, azimuth to right ascension, 15 degrees per hour or 15 arc minutes a minute of right ascension. So right ascension is in hours of right ascension, and azimuth is in degrees, and that's how you transfer in between them using that calculation there. So it's 360 degrees divided by 24 hours. I will answer your question, but we actually have a question and answer period afterwards, so please remember your question. All right, one last technique. Yeah, I have a go-to telescope. Hate to tell you, but your go-to telescope is not always going to find the object right away. There's going to be sometimes misalignment, problems with the telescope. You're going to have to troubleshoot it, and you have to align it in the first place anyway, so you might need to use star hopping techniques. You'll also learn the sky much better, and it's fun. That is fireworks and not thunder, right? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so here's the constellation that I'll just call Bob. Bob is an accountant. So that's this constellation is Bob the accountant, and we want to find this object here, M401K, in Bob the accountant. So this object here is a nebula. That's a symbol for a nebula here in Bob the accountant, and we have a bright star right here. And so we point our telescope in this area, and we know we have this true field of view, which I indicated on the constellation here, and we're pointing it right there. How do we find this object right here, the nebula in Bob the accountant? Because we are pointed right here, and we know that that star is really bright. We know it's that star. Find the stars around it. So we do. Let me give you a hint. It's called star hopping. So we hop. We literally take our telescope and we move the red circle, which represents where we're looking at, and we move 1, 2, and 3, and we can 1, 2, and then 3 down here. So if we get to this star and we know we're pointed at this star, we go and we move up and we move up again, and then we feel that we can move right over there. We're close enough that we can see the object. And this technique is called star hopping, and it's very fun to do once you get used to it, and if you have the spatial recognition to do it. And here's a real-life example that you're going to see tonight, most likely. This is the bright star Vega, and in Lyra, in this parallelogram portion of Lyra, you'll see the Ring Nebula. Real object, real star, real constellation, and this is one of the easiest star hops. If you can find Vega in your telescope, which you most likely will, you can find this parallelogram, and all you have to do is move from Vega along the parallelogram, and then about, say, 1/3 over between these two stars, you'll find the Ring Nebula. And that's how I first found the Ring Nebula. Few more things. Here's some homework right here. You'll be able to check out my YouTube and then video that will be posted later on tonight, and get this, fast forward through all the boring talking I did, and come to these list of reference books. 365 nights, and the Backyard Astronomer's Guide is really cool for starting to learn the sky. And if you're looking to purchase telescope starware, might be a good reference for you to look at and appreciate before making a purchase. I didn't wait to read the whole starware either, so if you didn't do it, don't worry about it. And lastly, my recommendation is join an astronomy club. There's a lot of knowledgeable people in this hobby, and they will certainly help you out. They are enthusiastic and friendly people, as most of us nerds are. So please embrace the nerddom and come hang out with us, and we will certainly help you out if you need to. So thank you, everyone. Oh, and I just make sure. Oh, I guess I do have some more. Usually that's my last slide, so I went off into an extra. Here we are, the astrophotography and EAA, both camera methods. You're just adding exposure onto your light gathering power. They are a additional level of sophistication, so I don't recommend starting with these things. Your robotic telescopes might make that a lot easier though, so that's up to you if you want to begin with astrophotography and EAA, but it's adding an additional layer of complication. And here's some of the pictures that I've actually taken up here. These are actually some of the old ones that I have. This is a interesting star cluster, right? It's an open cluster, and it kind of you can see some of the rose petal patterns in there. Kind of cool. This is the Intergalactic Wanderer. That's a globular cluster that they didn't even think was part of our galaxy for a while. That's the Ring Nebula that you'll see tonight. All right, that was it. That was it. So there you go.
All right, Paul, thank you for another great talk, and thank you all. So we are going to be doing a question and answer session. How that's going to work is for people here, you're going to raise your hand and wave it about, because in the dark, my vision, especially since I've been looking at a computer screen and whatnot, is very limited. So I'm kind of like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, vision based entirely on movement. Online people, you get it easy, you just got to type into chat. So I know someone out here had a question, so let's start with that. You got to raise your hand if you had the question, though, because I lost track of you in the dark.
I think the person in the hat.
We're going to have you speak into the microphone so that online people can also hear.
Okay. What's an hour as a degree of measurement? How does that work?
Yes. So I forget I told you the exact definition. It's there in the presentation. Don't worry about it's located at a specific constellation, at a point in a specific constellation in the sky. So what happens though is if you remember that the Earth rotates every 24 hours, so it's 1 hour of right ascension is 1 hour of rotation of the Earth's planet. And it was that 15 degrees per hour conversion that applies.
All right, and our first online question was, what in your opinion is the easiest and what is the hardest fun object to look at as a beginner in stargazing?
Some of the easy, the moon is really cool to look at, even though it's very pedestrian. I think I'm going to say the sun's very interesting to look at, but I would be very wary that you know that you're doing that correctly, because there's a real safety issue associated with pointing any telescopic object at the sun. The sun is dangerous for your naked eye to look at, it is ridiculously silly to even try to point a telescope at it unless you know you have the right filters and the right safety knowledge to point that. You have to know how to do that. So I researched that. I'm not even going to tell you how to do it. You have to research that heavily before you do the sun. And then some of the more difficult object, I'm finding some of the very dim nebula as I'm into EAA right now, electronically assisted astronomy. I'm finding some of the dim nebula, more diffuse, larger nebula, difficult to even find sometimes when I'm looking at it with EAA. And some of those things are astrophotography only because you need 30-minute exposures and days and days worth of data in order to even see them show up on your in your image. So those are some of the more difficult objects to find.
And one, two things. Solar. Basically, if you look at the sun, try and look at the sun through camera, like especially an older camera where it has a direct view path or a telescope, you are basically giving your eyes the bug under a microscope treatment.
Yeah.
Every year that we have solar eclipses, there are horror stories and pictures for people who went and looked through
not here
telescope.
specifically, but believe me, it gets shared throughout the astronomy, the amateur astronomy community about things about when people do that wrong. So don't do it unless you're really sure that you know you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, we're here. We're very careful. No, do you have your proper filters? Kind of mother henning, which is not the worst thing. Was there another question out here? Were you swatting at bugs or had a question? Okay, yeah, sorry, keep in mind, vision entirely motion-based, so I'm like, who's moving? And everyone out there freezes. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, so our next online question is, what was the hardest thing to remember when learning to use a telescope at the beginning?
Hardest thing to again with I don't think anything specifically when I was using my beginning telescope was necessarily hard to remember, other than maybe if I was trying to do something from memory, finding an object in the sky while I was star hopping. Trying to do that from memory was sometimes a little challenging, but I could always cheat and look the stuff up in a sky atlas. However, with EAA and astrophotography, just the setup and the workflow, so you can get as much scope time as opposed to setup time. You want to have your workflow down really well when you're setting up, when you're aligning the scope, when you are dialing all your exposure and gain numbers into your electronic capture software and all those type of things. Your workflow when you are quote unquote processing your images after you've captured them. All that type of stuff, to be efficient with that's a challenge. That efficiency with your setups and your processing very is I think one of the bigger challenges from that end of the hobby.
Yeah, mine was I had to when you're using multiple eyepieces, you actually want to start at the largest number you have and work your way down, which is slightly counterintuitive. You don't start at one and work your way up. You actually, and I learned to remember it by the larger the number, the more objects you could potentially see in that area.
That's a very good point.
So that was my hard It's a learned thing. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, do raise your hand. I'm going to get through some of these online questions. Sorry, someone asked, can we get someone to do a presentation on just setting up a telescope? They said Dobsonians are easy because it's just put the optical tube in the base and go. But the ones where you need to polar align and whatnot.
Polar alignment is one of the steps you have to go through when you are using, that's why it's not recommended necessarily as a beginner scope when you're going through an equatorial mount.
I said we would try and look into having one of our volunteers do it, but we can't guarantee who it would be and when it would be.
I think that would work maybe better as some sort of like side seminar or something like that, rather than a main talk to
we might
the
do
general
that
public.
during the winter online only programs, but I can't guarantee when because that does depend on what volunteer is up to that task. I know I am not because I am purely Dobsonian telescope. You will not find me having to polar align. I want to set the scope and go. Right. So it looks like, online people, any last minute questions you have, do get those in. I want to give them a little bit time because stream delay is a thing. The next online question, why are the outer planets and asteroids harder to find than some deep space objects?
Pluto and Pluto is especially hard to find, and the dwarf planets are especially hard to find because you can't tell them from stars, and they move in the sky, right? So they are not necessarily hanging out in a constellation in a convenient place to find star hopping wise, right? They could be off in a very uninteresting portion of the sky with no bright stars near them. So they get lost sometimes in the field of stars that are out there. Of course, most of the modern telescopes will have the solar system objects on a push-to mount, on a go-to mount, and you can just shine it, slew the telescope at Pluto, but then you're looking at Pluto, and again, it's not necessarily a very interesting object to look at because you again in the field of view that you see through the telescope, all you're seeing is another star or what looks like another star amongst stars.
Right. Last chance for any questions out here? Okay, so you want to ask one after the. All right. So our last online question is, Dan wants to know if you could have only one telescope, which one would it be, and how angry are you for asking? How angry at me are you for asking this question?
Any telescope?
You can only have one.
My next purchase is a good camera, so I can really move on from EAA to actual astrophotography. So my next purchase will not be a telescope, but my next purchase after that would be H alpha sun telescope.
Like a Coronado or
like
Lunt?
a Coronado or something like that, where I can check out some of the cool stuff happening on the sun. Of course, I'll probably get around to buying it at solar minimum, but that's another that's a problem for future Paul.
Yeah, well, that's always the case here in New Jersey. There's nothing going on in the sky. Gorgeous, clear skies. The biggest astronomy event of the century. Complete cloud cover. And everyone's laughing because that is, in fact, true. We had people drive to Totality Path, and they were completely clouded out for the last eclipse. We opened here even though we weren't in Totality, and we actually had it was a bit cloudy, but we had reasonable views up through totality. And then after totality, it got really stormy real quick. So that was fun. But anyhow, I do want to, since it looks like all the questions have been answered, I do want to thank you all for not only joining us here at the observatory, but online people, like I said, do hit those like and subscribe buttons, the free follow actions, if you will. And we do appreciate any support. I did notice a number of people did subscribe to us, and we do thank you for that because it does help us keep paying the bills and allow us to do these free programs. Like Paul mentioned, do check out our website. We have a list of all our member clubs and our social media and our upcoming talks. Check us out there. We'd love to see you again, even if it's just saying hi in chat. Reminder for people here, if you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty in back. It is illuminated by red. When we go to leave here, we are using our headlights because we do not want to get run over. And any flashlights, we do ask those be kept pointed towards the ground because I don't enjoy 20,000 lumens straight to the cornea. It's just no fun. With that, like I said, clear skies, good seeing, and good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for listening.